technology itself rarely fails. It's the organizations that will. Your initiatives or my initiatives. How does an organization designed for the next era of intelligence actually look like?
We're in an interesting phase right now. We are at a time where we're struggling with two major forms of complexity. First, the technology complexity that's coming along with not just AI, but agentic AI. And then on top of that is organizational complexity. And the instinct today is to throw people in layers every time a new wave of technology arrives. So the problem is that chaos is not going to solve chaos. So as we move further into this agentic enterprise era, we understand that the AI and agents are fundamentally different than traditional systems. That makes organizational clarity even more essential today. The companies that are going to win are going to have strong AI, but more importantly, they'll have organizations that are simple and clean enough to be able to execute with it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sherry Lee. Welcome to another podcast of T200Cast. I'm a product management leader and a proud member of the T200 Lift community. T200Cast is the dedicated podcast for T200. T200 is a peer community that aims to inspire, celebrate, and advance women's leadership in technology and elevate more women to C-level and board-level positions. In this podcast, we highlight T200's prominent women leaders' unique experiences and journeys, hoping to inspire more leaders globally to connect, learn, and lead. Today, we are really excited to have one of the most prominent women leaders in T200, Dr. Janet Sherlock, joining us. Janet, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sherry. I am so thrilled to be here.
Great. And Janet is a longtime T200 member as the Prime member. And I believe inside of the T200 community, it is such a privilege for us to see Janet's leadership and thought leadership in action, sharing the great insights through her years of experiences in the C-level, as well as the research work and her current work. So it is such an honor and it's a great pleasure, Janet, to have you on today's T200 podcast.
Thank you.
So we'll hear about Janet's intro. So Janet Sherlock is a technology and organizational design executive with extensive board and C-suite experiences. And she's also the founder and CEO of Org.Works right now. She specializes in helping companies to improve performance by simplifying organizational complexity and creating clarity in structure, roles, and decision-making. And most recently, she served as the Chief Digital and Technology Officer at Ralph Lauren, where she led global technology, data, and a multi-billion-dollar e-commerce business. Earlier, she was CIO at Carter's, and she's led digital and omnichannel strategy at Gartner alongside leadership roles at many major global companies. Janet's work combines decades of her executive leadership experiences with academic research in organizational design, and she currently advises CEOs and board members on AI strategy, operating models, and organizational effectiveness. That's amazing, Janet. We are so excited to hear your insights today.
Thank you. And I'm excited to share them. Sherry, thanks.
Janet, we'll start with your superpower. As usual, we would love to really learn from you. What is your superpower in your own words? And how do you feel is your signature energy or the unique edges that leaves like a ripple effect, right, in the teams and the business that you worked in? And this is the more interesting part, which is how much of that is inherently like how you grew up and how much of that is something that you have developed intentionally throughout your career and your academic research?
Yeah, so it's interesting. One of the biggest problems that I see inside large organizations isn't necessarily talent or strategy. It's the lack of clarity. So if I had to describe my signature energy that I tend to bring to organizations, I would probably classify it as clarity. Clarity on strategy, on priorities, on structure, and communication. So in many companies, you have people that are working so incredibly hard, but they're not always aligned. Different teams have slightly different interpretations of what matters the most, what their priorities are, and or even what their own or their team's responsibilities are. So I don't know about clarity being an inherent characteristic, but early on in my career, my first job out of undergraduate school was at Mobil Oil, shortly before the Exxon merger. And like many companies, it had its complexities, challenges, and alignment issues. But I had the opportunity to be one of the core team members on our balanced scorecard initiative for my division, which was United States Marketing and Refining. So I don't know if everybody remembers the BSC, which was something that was born out of Harvard Business School, and we were the first case study at Mobil Oil. So it was really fascinating to watch an organization of that scale with tens of thousands of employees to be able to use a framework to align thousands of people around shared priorities and goals and have a mechanism by which to measure them and really stay aligned. So that really stayed with me throughout my career, Sherry. And as I've moved through leadership roles, I try to apply that in very practical ways. So if I give an example, if I can share an example from Ralph Lauren with you, every Monday morning, and I did this to accommodate time zones, I had an informal, optional 30-minute Monday morning meeting with all my global digital and technology team members. So I would share updates on major initiatives and projects and recap things from the meetings I was in. So whether they were board meetings or executive meetings, and I would communicate exactly what was happening. So my philosophy was share everything that I know that isn't confidential. Because if people could understand what I understand and what the rest of leadership understands, it eliminates a lot of confusion and it prevents people from filling in gaps with their own assumptions when they don't know. So looking back, I think the instinct that comes naturally for me, Sherry, is to actually look at what's driving organizations underneath the surface. But the discipline around alignment and communication is something that I've intentionally developed throughout my career. And ultimately, I believe that power of clarity is why I started my own firm that you mentioned earlier, org.works, so that I can help companies with exactly that, organizational clarity.
That's great, bringing that clarity to the table. And I love how you approach the transparency and the clarity. I'm sure the people you worked with and who work for you really, really appreciate that aspect of the leadership and your superpower. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
So Jenny, building on that journey, you have held like many roles, and those are roles that companies typically look to when they want to transform, like a digital leader, technology leader, transformational executive, CIDO. And yet one of the most interesting threads in your recent work, as also you shared with us, is like technology itself rarely fails. It's the organizations that will. So sometimes even the best strategies and the platform struggle when the structure of the company isn't designed for how work actually flows. So I'm kind of curious, your journey from the C-suite, your board members, to now launching and leading and growing org.works. Was there any specific moment looking back across your career that you're like, I'm seeing this pattern, I'm realizing this real problem that was actually organizational clarity? And how did those moments and insights shape the thinking that eventually led you to the work you're doing today? Give us a little bit of a backstory.
Sure. Well, to hark back to what you said, that technology initiatives or technology-based initiatives very rarely fail because of the technology itself. I mean, one of the patterns that I've seen over the course of my career, and it's been stated by McKinsey and other studies, that 70, 80% of all of technology implementations fail due to human factors having nothing to do with technology. So I would probably characterize those human factors into three different categories. First is user adoption and change management. Next would be coordination across teams. And then third, the one dear to my heart, which is organizational design and structure. So that first layer of adoption and change management we're seeing that right now with AI, but it's something that I've seen throughout my career. So one of the things that I impress upon my team, Sherry, is that even though your primary job is implementing technology, your real job isn't just implement it. It is to ensure that it is working and being leveraged and utilized and the value is being created. So that means partnering closely with business leaders and business teams on training, change management, and adoption. And it's so interesting because being in the retail industry where the applications are distributed across stores, it gives you an opportunity to see this in real life. So if I would give an example, let's just say you're rolling out a clienteling application to 300 stores, and you look at the results and you say, oh, these aren't that good. And then you look at them at a store level and the results are uneven. Your first instinct might be, oh, well, maybe the system's failing. But when you look at the data and you see, oh, wait, there's a couple of dozen stores that are absolutely crushing it with this solution, that can tell you that the technology works. It's just it needs to have better training. You got to look to your field leadership. You got to look at change management. But having that opportunity of distributed technology really enables you to be able to see what's working, what's not working. But that second category of coordination across teams, I've seen it with my own teams. I've seen it where it's so interesting. You'll have, like, I'll make this up, a master data management team that support different teams. Or even a really good example is security, where they have their own initiatives and yet at the same time they're involved in every initiative. So when you hear people say something like, oh, well, we're supporting their initiative, it's clear that everyone's not looking at the functions initiatives as all of theirs. So when you have segregated philosophies about the goals, the timelines, decision rights, what's important, and is their project versus my project, you are bound to have coordination issues. But the third layer, the one that really sticks out, is organization design. And sometimes organizations themselves just are not structured for success. So, for example, when you have a chief information officer that shares technology responsibilities with a chief digital officer or a chief AI officer, oftentimes their teams are adjacent and they have overlapping responsibilities. So when the structure is not clear, even the strongest of leaders with the best emotional intelligence can't necessarily make it work, and their teams can struggle, because that's why this third layer, the organization design, can be so detrimental. Because the first two that I mentioned, you can solve with good leadership. But the third one's harder because you have the burden of organization design. You weren't probably sometimes set up to fail to begin with. And that's why I'm trying to help organizations not have that inherent problem built into their structures. So that's what's driven me to do the work that I'm doing today with OrgWorks, and to help leaders step back and think about their organizations and how they're structured so that strategy and technology and people can all succeed together.
I love that piece, to allow strategy, technology, and people to succeed together. And I feel like you've kind of hinted on sort of the hidden architecture of the enterprise, where you have your initiatives or my initiatives. Like it's the company's initiatives, right? This kind of hidden layer of how the enterprise actually works. And then you also mentioned that this is something pre-AI era, it existed, but now AI probably just amplified it. So if we think about this hidden architecture of the enterprise, which is something that leaders often underestimate, and as we think about entering, many would call the agentic enterprise era, where the AI agents can execute workflows across different functions end to end, and it gives us that abundance of execution. How should leaders rethink that fundamental architecture of the enterprise then? And then also, can we dive a little bit deeper just in terms of your insights on how does an organization designed for the next era of intelligence actually look like? What does it look like?
All right. Well, let's maybe break that up into two, Sherry, perhaps. But we're in an interesting phase right now. We are at a time where we're struggling with two major forms of complexity. First, the technology complexity that's coming along with not just AI, but agentic AI. And then on top of that is organizational complexity. And the instinct today is to throw people in layers every time a new wave of technology arrives. So the problem is that chaos is not going to solve chaos. So as we move further into this agentic enterprise era, we understand that the AI and agents are fundamentally different than traditional systems. So traditional technology tends to be deterministic. It's you write code and exactly what it does. And if it fails, you can typically figure out what went wrong. And AI is amorphous. So it's not bound or fixed by logic or predictable outputs. And agents can work across workflows that historically sat inside different functions. So for those reasons, that makes organizational clarity even more essential today. So instead of creating roles or departments or layers around AI, leaders need to be thinking about simplifying the architecture into fewer, more clearly defined functions and have full capability within those functions and have decision rights that are very explicit. AI needs to be embedded as a capability and not as a separate function. So one of the first things that I'm encouraging leaders to do is to look at their existing organizations and functions and teams or departments that exist between teams, things that help translate things between departments, the handoffs, the go-betweens. Those functions and those departments and teams should be really strongly considered, potentially earlier on, eliminate those and remove any extra vertical layers that are going to slow down agentic workflow decisions. So it's interesting that you use that term hidden architecture, because I think that that's actually the point, Sherry, is that leaders are underestimating just how much the organization structure actually impacts performance. And it shouldn't be hidden at all. The structure is what should be leveraged to drive performance and allow us to be able to use AI and agentic more effectively.
That's amazing. Yes, more clarity and more simplicity.
Yes.
And no more complexity, no technology complexity plus organizational complexity. That will not work. I really love those insights and those call to actions that you have, which is look at the handovers, look at the twin teams. Love that terminology. And think about how we can kind of create that clarity and simplicity for our teams. So if we can kind of go from the enterprise level, how leaders overall should think in the next era, in this agentic enterprise era. Let's zoom into roles that are specifically for technology leaders. So you've had roles for CIO, like CDIO, and your recent work suggests that AI is less about the technology leadership, but more about the enterprise leadership. So and like you just mentioned, AI is this kind of enabling capability across the different organizations and operations. So how do you see the roles of technology leader evolve? The CIO, CDO, CTO, do they just become architect of the intelligent enterprise? Or the role itself would evolve into something completely different?
Yeah, so I don't think that it's an either or question. And to be honest with you, I believe pre-AI craze, we've all been using AI for years, but since generative AI really became consumerized and therefore really became very mainstream, that even before that, the best CIOs were enterprise leaders. So that's not changing. But so the CIO doesn't need to become something different entirely. The role might need to elevate from a technology operator to an enterprise enabler. And I think that enabler part is the part where that's going to be the most focus. So what this means in practice is that the CIO and the technology organization, they need to fully own technology and AI strategy, the platforms, the data, the architecture, the governance, the integration, and the flow that allows AI to scale safely and actually enables pilots to actually go into production. A lot of times that people seem to think that there's other reasons behind it. Some of the times that things don't go into production is simply because of not being integrated in the right kind of way or not being integrated at all. But the point of it is that AI still belongs to the business. They don't need to own the use of AI across the businesses by any stretch. The models, the workflows, the outcomes, they belong in those functions, marketing, operations, product, finance, because that's where the context is. That's where the business runs. That's where the accountability sits. So the shift isn't taking about more ownership. It's about owning the right things more rigorously and really taking your stand on that. You aren't just there to service the organization. Yes, you're there to do that. Yes, you're going to enable them. But your technology strategy needs to actually be a strategy. So it's important that they're aligned to the business partners and have really good sponsorship with the CEO, because every time that the CEO is in a room without the CIO, the business leaders, board members, and everybody should be hearing the same message. So to that point about communication, that's the other thing where I think a lot of CIOs need to step up, which is their communication. They need to be able to communicate the whys and the what's behind their strategy, including the AI strategy, so that the business understands exactly what's possible, how to do things, what's governed, and exactly how to engage. So in this agentic era, the advantage comes from how well AI is embedded into work and how well it's operationalized. So the CIO needs to be the architect of that environment and the communicator of that. So that's the evolution, really.
Great. So the architect and the communicator, again, goes back to your point about the change management, the organizational clarity, and the simplicity. That's going to really differentiate the technologies in the new era. You hinted on some, I would say, kind of power shift, right? So if the roles are evolving in this direction, and we know that the industry is going towards this agentic kind of future, how does the tech capabilities that would define the leaders who thrive in this new environment or new era change? Because for decades, most of the power or most of the capabilities lies in how do we develop the strategy, drive the execution, the budgets, the teams, or the systems. But now AI agents can execute these workflows like we talked about. What would be the capabilities that will actually define the leaders who will thrive in the new era?
Yeah. So I've been laughing a little bit. I not because it's funny, but I love and so appreciate, Jerry, that you brought up the topic of power. I think that it's really interesting because a little story. So during my doctoral research, so that's where I studied the impacts of overlapping roles in organizations. So in my quantitative research, I didn't even delve into budgets or funding at all. But when I did my qualitative research, my qualitative interviews with leaders, it came up consistently. It came up, I believe, in every single interview. So the reality is that most leaders equate budget with control. And recently, we started to see a little bit of that mindset start to show up against the backdrop of AI. So you're starting to hear discussions about token-based costing and effectively metering jobs and work by function. And I actually think that that's slightly dangerous, because the minute you start tokenizing work, you risk turning AI into something that people are avoiding or something they're trying to optimize the cost instead of the impact. So in a world where AI expands execution capacity and capabilities, I just think it's the wrong instinct to just focus on metering out the budgets. So at the same time, AI does democratize power up and down the organization structure, not because everything doesn't need to necessarily be prescribed top down. So individuals and teams, as you said before, you were talking about agents, they can execute, analyze, create agents in ways that were used that required layers of approval, different workflows, and maybe potentially even specialized resources. So the power base does definitely spread, but hierarchy isn't going to disappear, and nor should it. And you still need it for governance and prioritization, accountability. And sometimes you need vertical hierarchies for budgets, because those things are just how organizations function. And it's how the human brain works. So while power shifting, it's not necessarily shifting away from structure, but I'd like to believe that it's shifting toward the clarity within it. So I think that the leaders who are going to thrive are those ones who are able to set very clear priorities, create alignment, and define ownership and decision rights, and look for cross-functional opportunities and ensure that AI is applied where it really drives great and positive outcomes, not just where it's going to be the cheapest. So I'm afraid that as we start getting into this dialogue and applying budgets into the discussion, that we might get bogged down. We're already very bogged down by the ROI discussion. So we just want to make sure that we can keep things flowing so that it makes its way throughout the organization.
Great. I love how you described kind of the powers, like AI is democratizing the ability to execute, but also democratizing the power a little bit. So in this new era, as leaders, we do need to think about what are some of the capabilities that preserves. And then you mentioned about the fundamental human aspect of that. And I'd really like to kind of dive a little bit deeper in that and also zoom out, because we talk about the organizational shift. We talk about potentially the role of technology leadership, and also we talk about the capabilities we need to develop in the next era. If we put this together, what's the kind of the organizational blueprint, right? If we fast forward to the next decade, let's say we're looking at a high-performing enterprise in 2035. What would that look like? And what kind of roles would likely disappear, evolve, and what kind of roles would emerge? And this question is back to the point that you mentioned just now, which is what would remain fundamentally human at the center of all this leadership?
Sure. Yeah. 2035 is quite a ways off to think about. But I think if you look at my prediction for high performing enterprises in 2035, interestingly enough, they wouldn't look radically different on the surface, but I believe that underneath they'll operate very differently. So I think the biggest thing is AI won't sit beside any organization. It'll be embedded into how every function works. Oh, and we certainly will not be talking about it and obsessed with it like we are today. It'll become ambient and just part of the environment and regular day-to-day. So I think that the blueprint in the future becomes actually easier and cleaner than it is today. So in order to accommodate that, I think you're going to need less layers. So not as much horizontal layers. Yes, you'll have less horizontal layers, but I think that, and I mentioned it before, you'll have less vertical layers. So you'll have clearer functional ownership, stronger enterprise platforms, and then have data and technology and AI infrastructure all anchored centrally with execution happening in the functions where all the context lives. So not more complexity, but less and better environments. But you specifically asked in terms of roles and where I see changes occurring. I do think you're going to see some roles disappear, and especially those that are around coordination and translation and manual analysis and the handoffs. And think about how many of those you have. Like if you actually think about your own organization and think about how many roles and functions and teams exist just for handoffs, it's pretty significant. So the layers that exist just to create reports and do the handoffs, I think that they're going to diminish very significantly. And then raising it up to the leadership roles, I think you'll see a decline of those in between executive roles that we've been seeing creep up so much since like the past decade, 2 decades. So I think at the same time, you're going to see new roles emerge, maybe not always new titles. So I think you're going to see AI augmented operators inside every function. People who are responsible for the outcomes, but they're really deeply fluent in how to leverage data and models and agents to get there. So the companies that are going to win are going to have strong AI, but more importantly, they'll have organizations that are simple and clean enough to be able to execute with it. That's what I think is going to happen.
That's great. That brings us back to the topic, or the really the key aspect of that organizational design. So I want to ask this question kind of as a put it together question before we get to our signature question, which is something that I'm really looking forward to as well. But you often say that organizations run companies, not people, not titles. So what do you mean by that? And how should leaders think about that in the age of AI?
So I think that this is so important. And this is, I've been trying really hard with all of my clients at OrgWorks to actually force a mind shift. I believe that leaders need to fundamentally shift their mindsets to thinking that organizations run companies, not individuals. That doesn't diminish the importance of people. It actually reinforces it, because when the structure is clear, that's when people can do their best work. And if we understood that more deeply and adopted that and embraced that, I think we'd be a lot less anxious about AI and how it's going to replace people, and more focused on designing the organizations where both humans and AI are going to perform effectively together. So I think that the shift of thinking that people run companies, that they don't do it alone. It has to be, it's the organization that actually executes and performs for the company.
Great. And organization designs thinking first, and that just emphasizes the importance of people that are put into those organization designs. Great. Janet, we are now arriving at the signature question for T200Cast. And this is a question that we hope that our audience would not hear anywhere else other than just on this podcast. Thank you so much for such an insightful, packed conversation so far. So we'd love to ask you this question, which is, if you were to write a book on how women technology leaders can excel and thrive in the technology world, now the new AI world, what would the title be? And more importantly, why?
It's funny that you ask this question. So I am currently writing a book. It's going slow. It's going slow as molasses. So, but this question is making me think like, this would be a really good book. I need to add that to my list. So unfortunately, I've got like 3 books ahead of it, and I can't even get the first one out of the chute. But I think if I was writing a book specifically for women leaders, as you indicated, I think the title would be, "If not you, then who?" Over the course of my career, I've learned that leadership comes often down to whether someone is willing to step up to a problem that either no one quite owns it, or those problems that are just so hairy that no one wants to touch them, but that by addressing them, it would be so beneficial to the organization. So this can either be in your own department or your company, your industry, or potentially even broader. And because women can be so incredibly perceptive, they see what's not working in their organizations, and they see what's not working and what's holding up the strategy or the culture. And sometimes they hesitate, though, to push their own perspective forward to the things to address those things. So the leaders who really shape industries are the ones to say, if this problem matters and no one is fixing it, maybe I'm the one who needs to step forward and address it. So frankly, that's what I'm doing right now. I haven't made this pivot to organization design and structure because I thought it would be fun or just because it's different than being a chief digital officer or running enterprise technology. Through my doctoral studies and through all of the work that I've been doing in different companies over the years, I believe that organization structure is a material problem. It's been kind of unwieldy and a problem for well over a decade. And now with the onset of AI, and I said it before, chaos is not going to fix chaos. So I'm right now, I've taken this on as like my personal quest to try to help leaders and organizations grow stronger and get themselves prepared for AI and agentic, because they don't need more complex organizations. They need simpler organizations.
Great. Amazing. If not you, then whom? I feel like this is a question we could constantly ask ourselves. I have a list of questions that is kind of like thought experiments that I just like to ask myself from time to time. I would definitely add this question to that list. And I look forward to reading this book, Janet, when you finish it.
Oh yeah, this book will be a long time away. My first book will be on organization design and the importance of it for company performance. So hopefully that'll be out in the next, I don't know, who knows how long. I've been at it for a little while.
It will take inspirational time, but we will be looking forward to that first book. Great.
Yes.
Janet, thank you so much. We will arrive at the lightning round right now, and this is kind of a list of questions with 20 to 30-second answers. Hopefully this will add a little bit of energy, so it gives us a little bit more perspective on the personal side of you. So are we ready to go to the lightning round?
We're ready for the lightning round. I'm a talker, in case you haven't noticed that, so I hope I'll be lightning through this. So we'll see. Go ahead, give me your best shot.
It will be fun. It will be fun. So what's the advice you would most want to give to your 20-year-old self?
Okay, so I'm already going to change your question, and this won't be lightning. So I give typically the same advice for people in their 20s and people in their 30s, which is to have a North Star. If you don't know where you're going, the likelihood you'll get there is pretty slim. So the problem that a lot of people in their 20s have, and I had, which is you don't have a North Star. You don't even know where to begin. So the thing that's so important is to really be introspective and build that inventory of what do I like? What really provoked me? What did I find great satisfaction in? What am I really good at? And you keep building that inventory. Eventually, your North Star will come. And as soon as you get that North Star, that really allows you to be able to step forward in your career with confidence and clarity.
Great. Have a North Star.
Have a North Star.
Have a North Star. Amazing.
See, you're able to do the lightning round better than me. Like you.
It reminds me of kind of like one recent like viral article or post or something about like how to change your life in one day, which is kind of going back to this question, which is spend a day just to think about what is your North Star.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. So what are some of the corporate buzzwords you secretly wish would go away?
It's so funny. There are a few of them that like everyone talks about, like they want to eliminate, hey, let's circle back, or this is synergistic, or let's take that offline. And yeah, those types of phrases can be exhausting and fatiguing, but the words that I would like to actually eliminate out of our lexicon in corporate America would be like digital and transformation and experience, especially when they're applied to job titles or functions. They can sound important, but they're so often unclear, they're fuzzy, and then they end up obscuring what people actually need to do and what needs to be done. So I like to eliminate, I go back to my North Star, my everything, which is clarity, and eliminate unclear words and titles.
This is so clear. All of those circle back, offline, digital, like those are not clear to your point, right? So I fully agree with you. I think kind of when we think about titles, outcome is really important, and that brings the clarity to everyone. What would be your favorite way of recharging?
When people ask that, I'm so embarrassed because like a lot of the women that I know are just like, well, I tennis, I run, I do whatever. I mean, I obviously like to spend time with my family and friends, but what I'm doing right now, this conversation is recharging to me. What I do with OrgWorks every day recharges me. So I try to live a life that is just regenerative and charging all the time. So yeah, life is just recharging for me.
Wow, I feel like you're living the dream, Janet. You have found your North Star, you're doing the work, and doing the work is the way of recharging. You're recharging every day. Your life is regenerative. Amazing.
You're recharging me too, Sherry. You are. So.
Really happy I get the opportunity and the privilege to do that. What is one thing you most look forward to in 2030, not 2035? 2030.
Okay. All right. So oh, well, first, like if I do my job well, we will see clear organizations. There will be, organizations will be very simplified. But on a personal basis, again, we're talking AI. So I'm telling you, I cannot wait, whether it's Optimus or whatever it is that comes up. I want a robot for my house. I want a robot cooking and cleaning and doing everything that I don't want to do around my house. So I can't wait for that. I think 4 years is possible. We'll see.
I love that. My son is doing his chores is doing laundry. It would be great to have a robot to do that. I fully agree. Yeah, and then we as humans doing something more meaningful and more fun and recharging. Great. So the last one is, if we were to take your leadership journey into a movie, and let's say we're revealing that movie tomorrow, and just like every blockbuster would have like that memorable line on the poster of that movie, what would be that defining line on your poster?
Oh, this is funny because ironically, I was just talking to Steven Spielberg about this the other day. So this is just funny, like a Hollywood movie poster with my leadership journey. Okay, that is pretty comical, but I would have to say that, especially where my mindset is right now, that poster would say, if my leadership journey were a poster, it would be great people aren't enough. The organization has to work. There's something that I've learned over the years is that companies are often trying to solve problems by changing people, changing titles, whether it's a new leader here, a new team there, a restructure here, a reorg there. And sometimes the real issue just is not the talent. It is just the way that the organization is built. So yeah, my movie, great people aren't enough. The organization has to work.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Janet, for
coming to a theater near you, right?
Yay. We're looking forward to seeing that movie and seeing that poster. Maybe we can get AI to generate one, and that becomes the poster of this episode.
There we go.
Amazing. Janet, I learned so much from this conversation. You shared with us your superpower on the clarity, and you shared with us this important mind shift around, hey, technology rarely fails, organizations do. And organizations actually run companies, not the people, not the title, although it definitely speaks the importance of people when we have great organizational design. And really that clarity in the organizational design is what will make strategy, people, and technology work together. Really appreciate your amazing sharing, Janet.
Thank you so much, Sherry. I really, really appreciate it. And I thank you for doing this for the T200 community. And I so appreciate the T200 community and what we all embody for women leaders in technology. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Janet, for giving it back to the community and sharing your amazing insights and experiences. Thank you so much.